Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. So today this video is called Hindsight is 2020 because I like puns and because it's really going to be a reflection on the year 2020, and it's a mix of sort of my personal, what was going on in my personal life and the books that I read. This is something I actually like to do kind of usually the week between Christmas and New Year's. Every year I look back on the year that is coming to a close, and I like to think about events that I did that year, or good things, bad things, stuff that's changed, and just kind of have like a little bit of a time of reflection. That sounds kind of pretentious, but it's true. And reading is a big part of that. And so I also like to kind of go through my Goodreads and remind myself of what I've read that year. So yeah, and so this year I was doing that partly just because that's something I try to do for myself personally, and also I was trying to put together like lists of best books and books that I enjoyed in 2020. So I decided to put that all in a video for you. It's still just gonna be me standing here talking to you, but I am going to go through every month of the year and just kind of say a little something about my personal life, and if I have a picture or something, I'll put that here. And I would like to mention a book that I read that jumped out at me as something from that month. None of the books that I'm going to talk about today are ones that are in my best of 2020 video, which should already be out. My plan, it should be here, so I'll put a link to up in the cards and down in the description for you to check out the best of 2020. But these are the books that stuck with me, or were interesting, or stuck out as something I remembered strongly when I was kind of going back through the months. So yeah, some just real quick stats for you math nerds out there. I know there's a bunch of you, and I am one of them. In 2020, I read 120 books, or I finished 120 books, which was a total of 41,871 pages. My best reading month was August, which is a page count wise, which is not a big surprise because I did a bunch of readathons in August, and so that was 5,289 pages. And my worst month was March, for reasons unknown, and that month I only got through 1,494 pages. So on average, yay math, that's 3,489 pages on average per month, which is pretty good. Also, I kind of keep track of ratings for my own personal self, as well as the ratings that are on Goodreads, but I use like 3.3 stars kind of for my own system. So my average rating for the whole year was a 3.36, which I think is pretty good. That shows that I am both reading critically, in my opinion, and because I don't just give everything like really low or really high stars. I try to give things a fair judgment, but also it shows that I'm reading things that I'm generally enjoying, because it's not like a 2.5 middle of the road, it's a 3.4. So I'm generally reading stuff that I like, or I'm generally liking what I'm reading. So let's jump into the months. In January, it was kind of slow. January of 2020, I rang in the new year with my family in Pennsylvania, and it was my husband's birthday that month. I remember hanging out with friends. It was like a normal yay new year for January of 2020. My favorite book that I read the book that stuck with me that was close to a top book for January was Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy. This is a graphic novel. It is an LGBTQIAP+ story. It's a YA, it's a coming of age story. It's also fantastical, paranormal, in that there are like shapeshifters and magic. Main character is a witch. She's either deaf or hard of hearing, I can't remember. And the other main character is a shifter, a werewolf, I can't remember. But it's just this really cute story of these two young women and how they are friends, and like maybe more than friends, and there's magic. And I really enjoyed Mooncakes, and I really would have loved for it to actually be a full length book, just because there was so much other stuff that was hinted at that I wanted more. So I really enjoyed Mooncakes and recommend it. In February was sort of right before the end of stuff. I know that like in other countries around the world, people were already in quarantine and, COVID had hit the other countries hard. But in my life, February was still pretty normal. Had a Valentine's Day with my husband. And then I actually went and visited my best friend, Abby, in Tucson, Arizona at the end of the month and hung out with her. And that was amazing. She is one of my, best friends in my life. And it was a really great trip. And the book that I chose to talk about that I read in February was my longest book of the year, which was a Stephen King book, which was 11/22/63. This book is, I listened to it on audio, and it took forever. And this book is like time travel-y. I had seen just 2 or 3 of the episodes of the show through Hulu, through HBO. Anyway, and so I read the book because I'm interested in like time travel-y kind of books, or where that's an element. And so the main character in that book is trying to change the past by, using this like natural phenomenon where he can travel back in time, and it always takes him to the same exact date, and it's in like 1959 or 1960. And so he is hoping to change the past by preventing Kennedy's assassination on 11/22/63. So the book is really long. I enjoyed it, but also I think it could have been condensed down a little bit, or some bits of it edited out. And ultimately, I wasn't really that satisfied with the ending. So I do recommend this book, but also, and it did stick with me. But I don't know that it was like my favorite. It didn't make my favorites list of the year. Let's just phrase it that way. So March was when COVID stuff started affecting my life, and here in the middle of BFE Ohio. And so there was a sort of online transition to starting to do things online instead of meeting in person. And there was like a toilet paper shortage, and it was a lot of discussion with people in my family who are in the medical field, as well as with my coworkers at work, because I'm in the medical field. So March was the kind of the start of COVID affecting my life directly. And then I'm going to mention a book that I was reading in March, but that I actually did not finish, which was called Voices from Chernobyl, and the author is Svetlana Alexeivich. So I had watched Chernobyl, the HBO show, with my husband. It's 6 episodes, I think, long episodes. I think it's an HBO show, and it's all about Chernobyl and the nuclear disaster that happened there. And I had not really, I knew a little bit, but that show was really amazing and had its amazing soundtrack. It's obviously extremely graphic and depressing and serious, so there's all those triggers. And so the book Voices from Chernobyl is actually a collection of interviews that the author had done, and her story and other people's stories. And so I was reading this, and it was extremely intense and extremely emotional, and not an upper. And so I would kind of read a chunk and then set it down, and read a chunk and set it down. And so ultimately I didn't get past 50% just because I wasn't really in the right mind space. And also this was when quarantine stuff was starting to happen. So I do find the entire Chernobyl disaster very interesting in that there's nuclear disaster you don't want to watch, but you can't help but watch kind of way. But at the same time, it's so heartbreaking to hear those stories. So that's why I wanted to read Voices from Chernobyl. And someday I think I will come back to that book. So April, quarantine stuff is sort of in full effect. Not that I felt that too many people in my life in BFE, Ohio were really doing a very good job about it. But my husband and I are both essential, so neither of us really got any quarantine time at home. So yeah, but I actually spent most of April doing BookTube research. I had been watching BookTube kind of on and off for a couple years, and I finally was like, this is something I want to do. All of my avenues of social interaction are pretty much shut down except for my coworkers. So I had kind of decided I wanted to start a BookTube channel. And so I basically spent the whole month of April doing BookTube research on makeup and light and cameras and microphones and books and how it was going to work and what are common videos, blah, 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 blah. So that was fun. And the book that I chose to talk about from April is Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. This book also has to do with some time, it doesn't have to do with time travel, but it's these two main characters who like meet each other when they're young, and then there's this big time jump where like we then come back to them like 20 years later. So I had not been expecting, I knew that that time jump happened, but I hadn't been expecting it for it to be so big. And I really felt like that was kind of the letdown of the book for me, was that like the main female character was like still hung up on these things that had happened so long ago, and she'd never been able to like move past that. And I didn't like that part. And because they had like, there was good emotional development when they were young and falling in love, but then like in the like when they reconnect many years later, I just like didn't feel that between them. So for me, Twice in a Blue Moon was a Christina Lauren miss, and I was kind of frustrated about that book. But it did stick with me, and I kept like thinking about it through the rest of the year, because I was like, why did this book not work for me? And like, what about it was great, and or what about it was great that I missed? Because I felt like there were other people who really liked that book, and so for me, that was sort of an interesting Christina Lauren choice that didn't meet my expectations. So then it was May, and I actually started my booktube channel in May of 2020. So that was exciting and also scary. And there was still sort of quarantine stuff happening, you know, in my area of the world. Again, still, I never got any quarantine time off because I was essential. So there was still a lack of social stuff happening, but I did get to go see my cousin graduate from high school. They did this cool like drive-through ceremony so that everyone was in their own individual cars, and you tuned in on the radio to a local AM station where they were broadcasting the speech, and they read your names, and it was a really cute way of graduation. And then the best part was we were like 12th in line, and when she was done, we got to drive away. We didn't have to sit there and listen to the next 180 kids. But actually the book that I chose for May was The Van Birch Incident, written by Marla Holt. This was an arc that I got because I was like, I'm gonna read arcs. I read so many books. And like now I don't really read arcs because I can never get to them in time. But The Van Birch Incident was a contemporary romance. I thought it had to do with like a rock star or something, which is why I requested it. And like, it doesn't. I mean, there is like a celebrity with someone who's normal, a non-celebrity. But this book has a lot of heavy content in it, in that the main character is assaulted, she's raped, in like the prologue. So that's not really a spoiler. But that is a content warning. And so then like the rest of and she's the one who is like essentially like a Taylor Swift character, kind of. And so then throughout the rest of the book, she is trying to sort of recover from this, and she's dealing with some flashbacks and PTSD elements. She's also dealing with people who don't believe that it happened. There's a lot of like mixed media stuff happen. Well, not mixed media, but there are little entries of like blog posts and tweets and other media elements in between each chapter that kind of show both people who are supporting the main character and also people who are hating on the main character, which I think worked really well. The other main part of this book, I did a whole review, so I'll link that up in the cards and down in the description. But the other main element of this is that the love interest is actually her like stepbrother, but they didn't really grow up together, and they're obviously not genetically related. And so there was this kind of like, you know, stepbrother, stepsister element. And so even though this book was so heavy topic-wise, there's also a fair bit of humor. And even though it has this like vaguely kind of incestuous element, like that part was never disgusting. And I thought the book was really actually well written. And so I quite enjoyed this book and gave it a high rating. And I am interested in reading more from this author because I really enjoyed The Van Birch Incident, and I had not really been expecting to. So June, BookTube is thriving. I've been on BookTube for like a month. I don't know about thriving. I didn't keep track of like any of my numbers, so I don't know how I was even doing. But I was finding new book clubs, finding new people to follow. I kind of found the romance part of BookTube in mid-June, I think. So that was awesome. I felt like I really like, that was my thing. I was no longer doing a ton of social stuff in June. And so I just kind of sunk fully immersion into booktube, and I loved it. The book that I chose to talk about from June was a nonfiction book called Hidden Valley Road, written by Robert Kolker. This is a nonfiction book discussing schizophrenia, because and the main focus of this book is a family in like the middle of the century in the out west, Utah or something. They had 12 children, and 6 out of those 12 children were ultimately diagnosed with schizophrenia. So like that family was regularly researched and cited, because they were like, wow, like where else are you going to find people who are genetically related to each other, but like and have such a big sample size, and then there's also kids who are not sick but who are still full siblings. So there is a lot of research as well as like familial stories and stuff in that book, and it was moving. It did start to like kind of bog down a little bit, but I really enjoyed that book, and I really enjoyed learning more about schizophrenia because I was a psych major and a neuro major, and so like kind of harkening back to some of that stuff from college was great. So if you're interested in schizophrenia, and if you're interested in hearing some of the like very intense stories that happened in this family where there were so many kids, especially so many sick young people, I definitely recommend Hidden Valley Road. Halfway through the year. July was me continuing to do booktube stuff. I hadn't seen my family since like February 1st or something, so I actually did go up and see family just for like one day. We did a little bit of social distancing, like cookout. They live a couple hours away from me. And I also in July was finishing up my Twilight series reread in anticipation of Midnight Sun coming out in August. So I was busy in July. And the book that I chose for July was Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I found a Wheel of Time read along was starting, and so I jumped in, and that's been really fun. I've just kind of been working my way very slowly through the Wheel of Time series. I'm almost done with book 4, and I've been enjoying this series. I did a whole review on the Eye of the World, so I will link that as well. But basically, I'm just really happy that I kind of started this big, monstrous, like well-known chunker of a series that is a classic for the fantasy genre. And this is not my like major wheelhouse, but I am enjoying this whole series, and I'm glad I've met some cool people through the Discord. So August was readathon central. I did like 3 readathons all overlap, at least two, maybe 3 readathons kind of all overlapping for that month, and I read so much. It was the highest page counts that month, pages read that month in August. Also, I bought a reading chair that I think I talked about then and was really excited about, and also like 8 people I knew all announced that they were pregnant, and everyone's like due coming up soon in February and March. And I also started the first book of the Immortals After Dark series in August, so that was fun, and I'm glad I started that series. But the book that I chose for August is Hairpin Curves by Elia Winters. This is a sapphic love story. It is a slow burn childhood, like they used to be friends in childhood, well, in like high school, and then they drifted apart, and then they've come back together, and now they're taking this big road trip together, and they just kind of have to like reconnect and talk it out on this road trip. And it's forced proximity because they are traveling together in a car, and they're like turning it into an actual road trip where they stop and do like fun touristy stuff along the way. And this was a fun read. I have since read another book by Elia Winters, and I really enjoyed it. And they're both Hairpin Curves and Tide Score were both quite steamy, so I want to read more from Elia Winters, and I would really recommend Hairpin Curves. I want to read more sapphic love stories as well, but that was a kind of a surprise because I thought road trip story, I don't know, childhood friends to lovers, and then I was pleasantly pleased because I thought it was really good, and I really enjoyed the connection between the two characters because they were talking a lot. You know, they were stuck together in a car, and they were kind of revising what they thought about the other person as they went. So that was really enjoyable to me. In September, I continued doing booktube stuff. I was baking a bunch in September. I don't think I took any pictures of that. But I also was a little bit in a slump after trying to cram so much reading in August. And so I was kind of throwing myself into the few things that I was doing that was not reading. Like I do Dungeons and Dragons with 2 different campaigns. So that was kind of busy with that. My coworker had a baby. But I was doing a bunch of stuff that was not reading. It wasn't my worst month of the year, but I just was like feeling apathetic about what I was reading. I had my lowest rated book of the year, which I will just go ahead and link to my Goodreads review because I was kind of scathing about it, but I got it as an ARC, so I don't really want to talk about it on my channel. But the book I did choose to discuss here in September is Loveless by Alice Oseman. This was the Page Turner Book Club's choice for September. It is a coming of age story, a like new adult story, an LGBTQIAP plus story. We follow Georgia, who has never been in love and has never been in like a romantic relationship before. She's going off to college and she's really starting to question why she is struggling to be in relationships, or like struggling to find love, and like why has she never had a significant other before. And she's kind of thinking maybe she's asexual, and like it's sort of her coming to terms about what does that mean, and like what does that mean for her, and like how does this change what her life outlook is and her own views on herself. So it is a really beautiful, I tabbed a lot actually. It is a really beautiful story. I feel like I would have enjoyed it a smidgen better if I hadn't been in this like weird slump. But I really enjoyed our discussion at the Page Turner Book Club, so I'll leave a link down in the description to that discussion. And I had read Heartstopper by Alice Oseman earlier in the year and really liked that, so I was I'm definitely intrigued and want to read more. I also have had Radio Silence by Alice Oseman checked out for like months and I've not read it yet. So I definitely recommend Loveless, and I wish I would have been able to be like, best book, favorite book, 5 stars, but because of just what was going on in my life, I was like, okay, it was really good, 4 stars. Last quarter of the year, October. This was my 6-year wedding anniversary with my husband. We enjoyed the leaves turning. There was a lot of really beautiful like weather days in October, and my husband and I had a couple fires outside, roasted marshmallows. I also was planning and preparing for the Love in the Night readathon. But the book that I read in October that I really like and I want to talk about is called Theft of Sapphire. This is by Joseph Daniel. This book was recommended to me by my cousin Nicole over at See Nicole Read, and she and I did a video discussion about this book, so I will leave that linked down in the description, maybe in the cards. Don't know how many times I've said that already, so it might be out of cards. But The Theft of Sapphire is sort of, we weren't sure if it was middle grade or if it was YA, but it's definitely a fantasy YA story where the main characters are all genies, and we follow this young kid who is like maybe like the equivalent of like a 13 or 14-year-old kid. He's a genie, and this book is very fast-paced. It's very like plot heavy. It's very like action-packed, and I'd sort of gone into it thinking, oh, this is gonna be like perfectly fine, but I actually was really sucked into it, and the writing was great. I could tell that the author really has a love of words and puns, and so in that way it kind of reminded me of Lemony Snicket in that like the author has this very distinctive like voice that I thought shone through the whole book. And then also because of these like elements of magic and other creatures and hidden world, I felt like there was Harry Potter like qualities as well, and I enjoyed the story. I felt like I was like really pulled along, and it's the first book in a series, so I was pleasantly pleased and surprised to enjoy Theft of Sapphire as much as I did. So in November started with all the election results in America, so that was an emotional couple days with a awesome result. Then there was the Love in the Night readathon, which had been a work in progress, and I was so happy to participate in that and read so much paranormal. It was awesome. And then there was Thanksgiving, which I did go up and see my sister for Thanksgiving. We were trying to be safe and kept just a couple of us, and it was a hard decision, but we did decide to do it, and I don't regret that, just because we were all trying to be as safe as possible. But it was it didn't really feel like Thanksgiving because it was only a couple of my family instead of my big whole family. But yeah, so I kind of already mentioned I read a ton of paranormal romance in November, and that was awesome. And it reminded me how much I love paranormal romance, and I really want to read more paranormal romance in 2021. But the book that I wanted to specifically say was that I started and actually read the first 3 of the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. The first book is Dark Lover, and the whole books are by J.R. Ward. And Dark Lover is the first book. It follows Wrath and Beth. I listened to the audiobook. It has to do with vampires. Wrath is actually like the king of all the vampires. It is steamy, and I think I just really enjoyed like starting this series that a lot of people really enjoy. It's like a classic paranormal romance series. A lot of people are like, yeah, Black Dagger Brotherhood, like that's more like a popular one. So I was glad to start it, and I was listening to the audios. They are definitely, the books are a little bit dated, which to me just make it, oh, there's a dog running around in the street. I hope someone catches it. Oh, okay. No, someone's right there. Anywho, I was really happy that I started the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, and the books are a little dated, but also reads as funny to me in these days and times. So I enjoyed starting Dark Lover. And December, end of the year. Okay, so I started December with a little bit of like Twitter drama, but then I also had fun cookie day with family. Again, it was not my whole family. It was just like 1 or 2 people that I am glad we managed to get together. This is an annual tradition. My family has always gotten together every year and baked a crap ton of cookies, and then everyone gets to take them home with them. And then we had Christmas, and it snowed, and it was like just the perfect day for snow. It like snowed on Christmas Eve and then was like gone by Sunday, and it was sort of perfect. And Christmas was great. It was weird because I just stayed home with my husband and didn't see any family, but at the same time, Christmas was really nice to like have that bonding time with my husband. So the book that I chose for December was The Duchess Deal by Tessa. This is a historical romance. I am still not totally sure how I feel about historical romance at this point in time, but I did really like this book. The Duchess Deal is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. We follow the Duke of Ashbury, who is all scarred up from the war, and Emma, who is like this, like, she's not a gentle woman. She's a, like, I don't know, peasant. I don't know. She's a non-titled person who's a seamstress. And so the two of them kind of meet, and he proposes that they have this, marriage arrangement. So it's like a marriage of convenience trope. It's not a fake dating trope. But ultimately the banter that develops between the two of them and the love that grows between the two of them was great, and I found the book really funny. So Tessa definitely was a great recommendation, and I want to continue reading more from her, and I am hoping that she will be one of the people that makes me really enjoy and fall in love with historical romance. So there you have it. That is all 12 months of the year. I picked a book that I read in each month that I wanted to talk about, and I also talked a little bit about my personal life. I've never done like a Q&A on this channel. Maybe I will at the next like milestone or something. If you have any questions for me, if you have any recommendations about recommendations based on any of the books that I talked about today, leave those down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching this video, and leave down in the comments something that you did in 2020 that didn't actually suck, because I don't think I want to scrapbook 2020, which I've done kind of in the past sometimes for some years, but I am glad that I've reflected back on this year, and I would love to hear a fun memory that you have from 2020. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more romance related content. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye!